Welcome back to Recap House. Kindly subscribe to our channel. Your subscription is very valuable to us. Today I will show you science fiction, sentiment, and dramatic film from 2016, named Passengers. Spoilers ahead. The interstellar spaceship Avalon should be visible going through space, making a beeline for a colonized world called Homestead 2. Every one of its quarters is vacant, the vessel is progressing automatically. The 258 crew members as well as the 5,000 travelers are in hibernation. Unexpectedly, the vessel goes through a space rock belt that is debilitating its safeguards. Power is redirected to the fundamental safeguard, however, the vessel is on a crash course with a massive space rock. Unexpectedly, the space rock slams into the vessel, causing different glitches. The vessel starts self-restitutions, yet one of the hibernation cases actuates. The traveler stirred is Jim Preston, a mechanical specialist. His unit opens and a mechanized framework assists with his enlivening, letting him know that he's been through 120 years in suspended movement and that the vessel is just 4 months from Homestead 2. He's informed that he will want to spend the rest of the time partaking in the lavish parts of the vessel. Jim gets directions about his ID band, his lodge, and the essential exercises he's to participate in before his appearance in the new world. Energized and apprehensive to meet individuals on the vessel, he prepares, leaves his lodge, and strolls into a mechanized class implied for a whole learning bunch. Jim looks a little restless, as the visualization makes sense of the circumstance on Earth, calling it overpopulated, overrated, and exaggerated. It advises him to hold his inquiries to the furthest limit of the example, however, Jim continues to inquire as to why he's the only straggler. He understands that the multidimensional image can't respond to his question and goes to look for others. He gets to the primary concourse of the vessel. Nobody is there either, however, a computerized enlightening work area offers to help. Jim requests to converse with a genuine individual and it sends him off to converse with a steward, however, when he observes that nobody is there as well, he requests to address the commander. At the point when he gets to the scaffold, even though he doesn't have access inside, he can see that none of the principal groups is conscious of the same token. Jim in the long run goes to the observatory, where he figures out that the vessel is 90 years from Homestead 2. He understands that he awakened too early, so he surges back to the concourse and communicates something specific back to Earth asking what he ought to do because he doesn't have any idea how to get once more into hibernation. The interchanges framework illuminates him that the overrated call to Earth would require roughly 55 years to find a solution back. Jim is crushed. He strolls around and finds the vessel's bar, where he sees someone else. As he's conversing with the barkeep, something appears peculiar about him. When he goes to get him a beverage, Jim understands that he's an android. It's called Arthur. Jim needs to figure out additional data from him, yet he couldn't clear up for the android how he can be there early. Jim awakens in his lodge the following day and goes to the saloon, where he rapidly understands that the greater part of the things on the menu are held for gold-class travelers, as it were. He gets his plain espresso and attempts to sort out some way to fix his hibernation chamber. After he gets every one of the tools, he figures out how to make it work and rests within the unit. In any case, nothing occurs. Then, he chooses to utilize the tools he found to get into the group's hibernation chambers. That doesn't work by the same token. Little glitches occur around the vessel. Jim continues to get back to the bar to drink, but generally to converse with Arthur. The android offers him guidance, which persuades him to break into one of the gold homerooms and attempt to have a great time on the vessel. Jim attempts every one of the eateries, the games, and the theater setup. Over the long haul, he turns out to be significantly more hopeless about being there alone. At some point, he becomes inebriated and meanders around the hibernation cases, when he coincidentally finds an airtight chamber with spacesuits intended for spacewalks. Jim gets into a suit and goes to the sealed area, pushes a switch, and afterward the button to deliver the isolated space entryway. Once outside the vessel, he's mesmerized by the view. He's the main cognizant person encountering that second in time. Jim discharges the magnets on his boots and floats in space, feeling crushed. He returns inside and removes the suit, however, returns to the isolated space without it on. He pulls the switch, prepared to end everything, except adjust his perspective without a second to spare, runs back inside, and slips on a container. Jim stands up and is quickly attracted to a lady in one of the units, named Aurora. He looks for her documents in the index and stands by listening to her traveler interview, becoming fascinated with her. Later he's seen sitting close to her pod, actually paying attention to her meetings. Back in the bar, he's perusing a portion of her work and is conversing with Arthur about her composition. He becomes fixated on the incongruity of his circumstance, going to one more planet for a superior life, getting up right on time and not arriving, and tracking down his ideal lady, just for her to be far off. Jim continues contemplating her and starts getting the plan to awaken her as well. He talks it over with the android, however, he doesn't grasp the problem. Assuming he awakens her for his advantage, he'd abandon her there with him, to bite the dust on the vessel. Jim rules against it from the beginning, however as time passes by he can't release it. Until one day, he adjusts his perspective. He goes to her case and figures out how to enact it. As she's awakening and going through a similar cycle as he did, he stows away and returns to his room. Somewhat later he goes to the primary concourse, wanting to see her. Also, she is right there, similarly however confounded as he seemed to be a year prior. Jim tells her they're the only ones conscious and takes her to the observatory. Then he tells her that he can't get to either the crew or the bridge of the vessel. Aurora goes nuts and needs to get once again into her pod. At the point when they get to it, Jim makes sense that there is no exceptional gear on the vessel that can assist them with getting once again into hibernation, really telling her that they're abandoned. They return to the concourse and he tells her that she ought to rest since she just emerged from hibernation. She feels sorry about him, spending over a year alone on the vessel. Jim returns to the bar, truly regretting what he did. He asks Arthur not to let Aurora know that he was the one that awakened her. The following day, Aurora awakens. She returns to the concourse and gets some information about the hibernation units. Jim joins her there and they go to eat. As they leave, the information work area has a glitch of some kind. In the dining, Aurora understands that Jim has been having the same breakfast for over a year and gets him one of the gold-class menus. They discuss the likelihood of fixing the units. At the same time, dissimilar to Jim, Aurora isn't prepared to surrender. She looks through the hospital, then, at that point, goes through research archives, at last winding up at the team's hibernation quarters attempting to tear the entryways open. Jim sees more breakdowns all through the vessel. In a little while, Aurora mourns her life on the Avalon. She composes, runs around the vessel, and swims in the pool, becoming increasingly more mindful of her circumstance. She goes to the bar to talk with Jim, feeling that his story may intrigue her. She inquires as to why he moved to the settlement. Jim replies with mottos from the organization first, however at that point further makes sense that he trusts that in the new world he could be someone, he could construct a day-to-day existence. Afterward, they end up in the observatory and Aurora, at last, offers her motivation to be there. Not at all like different travelers on the vessel, she has a ticket to get there and back. Her thought was to go to Homestead too, live there for a year, and return to Earth, to turn into the main writer that has at any point done that, composing the best story at any point. Aurora gradually abandons figuring out how to fix their ongoing quandary and Jim sorts out a method for encouraging her. He takes her moving, to the film, and the b-ball court. Finally, he takes her to the bar to meet Arthur. A little until she recollects what is going on. Jim is abandoned along with the android, regretting how he's treated her. The following second he's seen dabbling with something and in the other Aurora strolls into the observatory to find a smaller than normal Chrysler building he made for her. In a little while, they go out on a date. They eat and share anecdotes about their lives. She lets him know that her dad died when she was a youngster. After supper, Jim takes Aurora to the sealed area and they get into the spacesuits. They go out for a spacewalk together. Jim at long last has somebody to impart that brilliant experience to. Jim turns off the magnets on their boots and they float together in space. They return inside and promptly kiss, retreat to his lodge and rest together. Before long, they begin living like a couple. Aurora moves into his lodge and expounds on her life on the vessel. They run together, eat together, and rest together. Jim investigates the vessel further and finds the aqua farming inlet. He brings Aurora flowers. One day the vessel passes by a red monster and they go to the observatory to see it. It's Aurora's birthday, Later to the point that evening they celebrated in one of the numerous cafes on the vessel and afterward the bar. Jim goes to the washroom and readies the ring he made for Aurora, while she remains in the bar talking with Arthur. The android lets Aurora know that Jim awakened her purposefully, ignorant that he was still to stay quiet about that. Out of nowhere, Jim returns and she faces him in outright incredulity. She takes off enraged and overreacted. Jim returns to his lodge to find every one of her things gone. He runs into her in the canteen the following day, yet the second he talks, she takes off. Aurora is frantic. One night she heads toward Jim's lodge, punching and kicking him, needing to kill him. Conversing with her over the comm because she continues to stay away from him, Jim attempts to apologize and clarify his activities for her. He tells her he loves her, yet Aurora couldn't care less. She can't pardon him for taking her life. One evening, as Jim is in his lodge, another glitch occurs. The vessel faces a basic mistake and the principal order closes down. Afterward, he strolls into the lift and it glitches. Aurora strolls into the fundamental concourse and sees that Jim has established a tree there. Then, she goes to the saloon, where the food dispensary is likewise failing. Abruptly, the two of them hear the voice of the deck boss over the comms, asking who established the tree. The two of them run into the concourse and see Gus Mancuso remaining before Jim's tree. They present themselves and inform the head regarding what is happening. He doesn't have the foggiest idea how 3 cases could come up short. Mancuso takes them to the scaffold and he finds that something isn't quite right about the vessel, however, the data on the frameworks must be checked physically. Whenever they leave the extension, a robot nearly falls on their heads and both of them tell. Mancuso glitches have been going on all around the vessel all the more regularly. He says that shouldn't occur, as he tells them the best way to gather the information. Mancuso minds the pods when Jim goes along with him there. He's sorted out what occurred with Aurora's pod. The deck boss views what Jim did as horrible. Afterward, he's at the extension checking the gathered information, when Aurora goes along with him. They discuss what occurred with her unit, yet he tells her that he can't hope to make a significant difference either way. Jim strolls in with the 16th broken robot. Mancuso feels the hibernation infection, so he goes to rest, yet as he leaves, he hacks out blood. That evening, Aurora can't rest, so she takes a swim. Unexpectedly, there's gravity misfortune all through the vessel and she begins suffocating as the water from the pool moves with her. The gravity drive resets and she scarcely survives the ordeal. The two of them run into one another going to track down Mancuso. The 3 are once again at the scaffold, gradually finding what has been the deal with the vessel. Mancuso sorts out that something happened a long time back, taking out a significant framework. They need to find and fix what has caused the disappointment because the whole vessel is attempting to get a move on. If they don't fix it, the whole vessel will be abandoned. They go to track down the issue, yet Mancuso swoons, so Jim and Aurora take him to the hospital. He's perishing and there are no medicines that can stop it or draw out the time he has left. Sometime later, the 3 meet in the observatory and Mancuso gives Jim his ID wristband, advises them to fix the vessel and quickly perishes. Unexpectedly, the lights change to a disturbing red and the vessel begins shaking. Jim lets Aurora know that he wants her assistance, and they run toward engineering. However, there's one more disappointment in the gravity drive. Furthermore, immediately another that distresses Arthur also. Jim deactivates him. They at long last show up in engineering and begin searching for the issue. They find it in the power plant, and as they open the portal, Aurora gets sucked in. The space rock has caused a break in the body around there. Jim gets sucked in as well, yet he clutches the trapdoor as it continues to close on him. At last, he gets sucked in as well, yet they rapidly figure out how to seal the break. Right away after fixing that issue, Jim understands that there is more than one break in the frame. Both of them follow the direction of the meteor and find that it has hit the reactor control PC. Jim figures he can find new parts for it. They track down the part and change it, however the most common way of venting the reactor fizzles. They do it physically, however it bombs once more. Jim sorts out that he wants to open the vent entryway from beyond the vessel, so they can chill the reactor off. The two of them go to the airtight chamber and as he's preparing to go out, he gives Aurora Mancuso's wristband, since he probably won't return. She assists him with the suit, and as he strolls into the isolated space, she advises him to return since she can't live on the vessel without him. Aurora returns to the reactor, where the temperature has hit basic levels. A bolt from the reactor impels into her arm, as Jim is drawing nearer to the vent from an external perspective and sees the entryway. The temperature climbs in the reactor room, while he is attempting to sidestep the vent entryway to open it. Before long, he understands that he'll need to physically hold the entryway open so the reactor can vent, and he tells Aurora she could do without the arrangement, yet he proceeds with it and advises her to vent the reactor. She doesn't believe he should bite the dust, and they contend. However, he tells her that they need to save the others, and she vents the reactor. The cycle is fruitful. However, the exhaust from the reactor drives Jim away and breaks his tie. The strain in his suit is dropping as well. He lets Aurora know what occurred, and she moves as quickly as possible to get to one more suit and get him. He is sorry to her once more. She gets into a suit and flies out to get him, yet her tie is excessively short. She's pulled back, yet unexpectedly takes hold of his tie and figures out how to pull him in. Aurora hauls Jim into the hospital, just to figure out that he's now dead. She utilizes Mancuso's wristband to supersede the clinical conventions and revive him. The clinical case accomplishes the work naturally and resuscitates Jim. Aurora excuses him. Afterward, Aurora fixes Arthur and they give Mancuso legitimate space internment. Jim takes her to the hospital and advises her that he's figured out how to involve the clinical unit as a hibernation one. He advises her to get inside the case and brave the remainder of the excursion in there. However, as is subsequently uncovered, she declines and chooses to remain with him, conscious of the vessel. Jim, at last, proposes to her and they carry on without their lives on the vessel. After 88 years, the Avalon shows up on Homestead 2. The group awakens and tracks down the vessel in an extremely startling state. Aurora leaves them a message, retelling the tale of the existence of she along with Jim had on the vessel while the rest were dozing. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this. Your subscription is very valuable to us.